Hello everyone, my name is Charles and I'm with the On Target Simulation Development Team for Flashpoint Campaign's Southern Storm. I want to produce a series of videos demonstrating how to create a scenario from scratch using the scenario editor released with Southern Storm. It is my sincere hope that these videos will be useful to those who wish to create their own scenarios. To get started, from the main menu screen, select the Scenario button under the Edit column. This will take you into the Scenario Editor. This will open the first page, which contains the Scenario Creation Checklist and the buttons to load an existing standalone scenario or a campaign scenario. It would be helpful to read through the Scenario Creation Checklist, which will give you a brief explanation of the scenario creation process. Since we're going to be creating a scenario from scratch, there is nothing more we need from this page. So we are going to go ahead and press the next button at the bottom of the page, which will take us to the next page. This page allows us to set the basic parameters of the scenario. The first thing we need to do is set the date, the time, and the length of the scenario. The date defaults to August 11th, 1989. Let's change the date to July 12th, 1989 by clicking on the small calendar in the date window. We'll scroll back 1 month and select the 12th day. So now the start date of our scenario will be July 12th, 1989. Next, we are going to set the start time of the scenario from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and the length of the scenario will be 6 hours. The next section on this page allows you to set the purpose of the scenario. You can set a scenario to be a standalone scenario, or you can set it to be a campaign scenario. The second selection is for scenarios which are the first scenario in the campaign. The third selection is for all subsequent scenarios in a campaign. Since our scenario will be a standalone scenario, we are going to leave the settings as they are now. The last section of this page allows us to add the scenario description. Every scenario must have a scenario description. The scenario description should provide a detailed narrative of the scenario. It should provide some background on the events leading up to the battle and a description of the forces involved. The scenario description adds color to the scenario and adds to the player's overall experience and immersion into the scenario. To add a scenario description, select the Edit button. This will open the text editor, and on this page you'll be presented with two tabs. The first tab, called the Plain Text Editor, allows you to type in your description. The second tab shows you what the text will look like when the game is loaded. You can use HTML codes to format your text. If you don't know HTML codes, I would recommend you look at examples from other scenarios. You can also look at the codes online, which is what I did. For our scenario, we're going to be using a very basic description. And we're going to say this scenario was created to demonstrate how to create a standalone scenario. After typing in and checking your text, go ahead and select the Proceed button. You'll notice that the description that we typed is now in the scenario description window. After creating the scenario description, we want to proceed to the next page by selecting the next button as we did previously. This page allows us to select the map we will use for our scenario and the weather. To select the map, from the drop-down menu above the thumbnail map, we will select Amberg as our map. You should note the thumbnail reflects the Amberg map at this time. After selecting the map, you'll next need to press the Load Map button below the thumbnail to install the map. You'll note the map is now displayed in the main window. One new feature in map selection in Southern Storm, which is an improvement over Red Storm, is that the map loads with all the bridges in place. We will next select the weather. The weather in Red Storm was more generic, and the scenario designer had little control over it. This has been improved in Southern Storm. The weather in Southern Storm is based on real-world weather data for the date selected. When you load a map, it will load the correct weather station which has the data for that map. To select the weather, press the Weather Selection button. A window will open which will allow you to define the weather you want for your scenario. In Section 1, the correct weather station has already been selected. You can change the weather station if you so desire. In Section 2, you need to select the year or the years that the weather data will be drawn from. We're going to select the year 2010. In Section 3, the date of the scenario has already been selected, July 12th. You need to set the range in days that the program will search for the weather criteria that you will define in the next section. And you can set it from 1 day, I believe, up to 30, but I'm not sure the top end there. But we'll leave it at 15. The next section where you select your weather criteria is Section 4. We're going to choose clear conditions, full visibility. We'll leave everything else the same. Next we go to Section 5, and there you'll press the button Select Weather Data, which will allow the program to search for days which meet the criteria for your weather condition. Once it has completed its search, it will post the days which meet the criteria in the bottom half of the window. When the player loads a scenario to play, it will choose from one of these days as the weather for the scenario. If there are no days which meets your condition, let me give you an example of that. We're going to choose a snow day in July. Okay, if there are no days which meet your conditions, then the program will not show any days, and you'll need to change some of the settings, maybe the range, the year, or even your conditions. We're going to go back and select Clear, reselect our weather. Once you're done selecting your weather, press the Proceed button at the bottom of the window to return to the last page and to lock in your weather. Now we're going to press the next button to proceed to the next page. On this page, you can set map markers on the map. You should note you can place them at this time on the map, or you can return later after you've selected your forces and then place your markers on the map or even edit them. In fact, you can go back to any page and make changes. I would caution you not to change the map once you have selected your forces or added map markers. Changing the map would erase your work. There are 3 columns of map markers. The blue column are the map markers for player 1. And those markers are seen only by player 1, and they're invisible to player 2 until they either spot them or move on to the hex with the marker. The red markers are those for player 2, and they have the same effect, only in reverse. Player 1 cannot see the red markers. The yellow markers are neutral, and they're known to both sides. To place a marker, let's select like this minefield. You select it with the right mouse button, and then you drag it to the location on the map where you want it, and you drop it. You can also reposition a marker on the map. You do it the same way. You grab it with the right mouse button and you drag it to the location where you want it. You need to be careful, because if you accidentally grab a bridge marker, you could accidentally move it to the wrong location. An example. You'll note that you have the following markers that you can use. Minefields, as we've already seen. There are cleared minefields. There are chemical contamination markers, where you could use these to build a chemical contaminated area if you so desire on the map. There's nuclear contamination if you want to simulate an area of fallout. You have obstacles to slow the enemy's advance down. There are reduced obstacles. There's a marker for improved positions, which will give your units more protection if they're fighting in one. There are reduced improved positions. One new type marker that we have for Southern Storm that was not in Red Storm is hex side markers. And here's one. It's a minefield. It's called minefield shallow, and the word shallow means it is for the hex side only. And you place those on a hex side of a map. You can see I have the hex outlined, and you can see that this side now has a minefield on it. And how this works is any enemy unit crossing this hex side will be attacked. But if they cross from an unprotected hex side that does not have a marker, they will not be attacked. There are reduced minefields. There are hex side obstacle markers. Reduced obstacles. You have improved positions which fit upon a hex side. And what I like about them is if you want to, you can build an improved position that is open in the back. So it's basically only facing, they only get protection from one side. And of course, you got a reduced improved position on that. The red markers are exactly the same. The yellow markers are the same, except with these additions. You have gas clouds and smoke clouds. So if you want to start a scenario with a gas attack already having been performed, you can set these on the map. Or if you want to start a scenario with smoke already in place, you just move them onto the map and you have a ready-made smoke screen. Now, you should know that these clouds will dissipate just like they normally would in the game once you start the game. If you want erase the map markers you have on the map, it's quite simple. You right-click anywhere on the map, select the second menu item, and you get a pop-up window that allows you to select the obstacles you want to erase. And we're going to select all these. You'll notice there is no selection for smoke or gas clouds. This is to remove those from the map, and you can remove any marker from a map except bridges using this method, and it's one hex at a time. Again, right click on the hex you want to remove the marker from, select the third menu item, and it'll remove the marker from the map. You will note that there are two markers in the bottom here for blocking thermal smoke, smoke that'll block thermals, and smoke that'll block multispectrum. And these two types of smoke are not in the game at this time. So my recommendation is don't use them, because they will not do any good if you do. At this time, we're now ready to advance to the next page by pressing the next button. The additional scenario parameters page will allow you to do several things. First, it'll let you set the air superiority levels per hour for the game. It'll let you set the electronic warfare intensity level per hour, and the maximum resupply percentage allowed for each side. In Southern Storm, air attacks are not automatic as they were in Red Storm. Your attacking aircraft can be chased off or even shot down based on the air superiority level. To set the air superiority level for the scenario, first select the Edit button. The air superiority editor will pop up, which will allow you to edit the air superiority for each hour of the scenario. There is a vertical sliding scale at the bottom, which sets the hour, and a horizontal sliding scale on the right side of the map, which sets the air superiority level for that hour. The choices are Player 1 Strong, all the way at the top, Player 2 Mid-Level, Contested, Player 2 Mid-Level, and Player 2 Strong. In our scenario, Player 2 is going to be the attacker, and we'll start off with localized air superiority over the battlefield. So for the first 2 hours of the battle, he will have strong air superiority. So we're going to go ahead and set his air superiority, and you'll see how it's done. It's quite easy to do. At the start of the game, we're going to give him strong air superiority for Player 2. First hour, he will have strong. Second hour will be strong. The third hour, NATO starts winning back the air battle, and it goes from Player 2 Strong to Player 2 Mid-Level. Same for the next hour. Then it's going to go to Contested, and it will stay contested to the end of the game. Once you've set the air superiority to the level you desire, hit the Proceed button to lock it in and remove the air superiority editor window. Next, we will set the electronic warfare intensity level. It is very similar to setting the air superiority level. You'll set the EW intensity level for both sides, and the setting represents that side's EW assets and creates an EW burden on the other side. So a high EW setting for player 1 will set an EW burden on player 2 and vice versa. To edit player 1's electronic warfare intensity, select the Edit P1 button, as I just did. Remember, by editing player 1, you're setting the burden on player 2. You will note that it has two sliding scales just like the air superiority editor. We're going to build a weak EW burden on player 2 and build up as the scenario progresses. At start, player 1 will have a low EW burden on player 2. And then after 2 hours, it's going to go up to medium low. And it's going to build up to medium high by the end of the scenario. After setting the EW burden, hit proceed. You can see player's 1 intensity level on the graph. We will now do player 2. This time, select the Edit P2 button. Since player 2 is attacking, we'll start with a high burden and work it down. At start will be high. First hour will be high. After that, it's going to drop to medium high. We'll keep it there for another hour. Drop it down to medium. All the way down to medium low. By the last hour. After setting the intensity level for player 2, hit the proceed button, and you can see its settings on the graph. The last thing to look at on this page is the resupply percentage for each side. Here you are setting the maximum level that units for that side can be resupplied to. In our scenario, we're going to keep player 1 at 100%, but we're going to reduce player 2 to 80%. When player 2's units are resupplied, they can only resupply up to 80% of their basic load. This will conclude the video at this time. The next time we're going to look at creating player 1's force. We're going to set the order of battle tree and the forces which player 1 will use to fight with. Thank you.